Welcome to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. The next hour is all about the entrepreneur, why they start businesses, how they make their businesses grow, how they overcome failures and achieve success. Your hosts are Bob Gibbons, founder of Riata Commercial Realty, a commercial real estate advisory and tenant advocacy firm, and Stephen Nooner, founder and CEO of Alkami, a company with a unique process that helps businesses more effectively buy and manage their insurance programs. Bob and Stephen will ask probing questions to find impactful solutions that will help take your business to the next level. And now, here's Bob Gibbons and Stephen Nooner.
Welcome to The Next Level, conversations that propel business. This is Bob Gibbons.
And this is Stephen Nooner, and I'm excited to introduce our guest today. This guest has the maybe the distinct honor of being awarded an award. I don't even know what it is because they tried to call us and give it to my company. We have Stephen Bohanon with Alkami Technology. And he's the founder, chief strategy, and sales officer, and they've built a heck of a company helping the banking industry move to the new world of digital.
Right.
And I think you said the ultimate digital banking solution. They started in 2009, have 360 employees. That's
Nice.
incredible growth, and just welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great
Glad
to be
you're here. We like to start off with what we call wisdom of others. And we've had people that have given a quote from their brother and other people, but never from their father that I can remember.
Wow.
So you're the first to quote your father, and I like your quote. You said, he said, "You've got the easy part done, talking about it."
Right.
Why was he always saying that to you?
Oh, because I always had some sort of idea or something, some big, ambition, or I'm going to do this,
You're
or
an
I'm going to
idea
start
man.
this, right? And then he'd say, "Well, son, you got the easy part done, talking about it." And I have, at the time, I would say, "Oh, come on, like you're just, don't rain on my parade or whatever." But I think, especially now, and especially going through kind of creating a company and going through everything from a growth perspective, I don't know if truer words have ever been spoken. It is, I think that good ideas, not that they're totally scarce, but they're definitely more. I would say that good ideas are more common than the ability to execute on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so people will pitch things and say, "Well, isn't this a great idea?" And you can all agree it's a great idea. But then when you say, "Well, what would I have to do to bring this idea to life and actually help it come to fruition?" Therein lies a much harder set of tasks.
There's a podcaster by the name of Chris Guillebeau, and he has a podcast called Side Hustle School. And it's basically a really short podcast, like 10 minutes, and it's all about how people have created an idea or taken a hobby or something and turned it into some actual revenue. May not be a lot, could be a ton. But his tagline is, action is good. Ideas are good, but ideas with action are far better.
Right.
And it's kind of like your dad. He didn't take it to that extent, but,
Right.
You got to have some action at some
Yeah.
Is it? I don't remember. Is it Drucker? Someone has a quote: "Idea without execution is a hallucination," or whatever. Have you guys
Or a
heard
fantasy.
that?
Yeah, or a dream.
So yeah, it's cool. Your dad gave you that hard truth, right?
Was your dad an entrepreneur?
No, he was actually a pastor.
Ah,
Yeah.
well,
So I grew up in a pastor's home, and then that was probably what a lot of it was. Is that I would have ideas about things to do with the church, or we need to change this, or maybe we'll I had some idea, some cool thing. It could be a marketing thing, could be something to change, or what we need to do this. And I'd say, "Well, you got the easy part done."
Yeah.
talking about it.
Yeah, but a pastor is definitely interested in action, right?
That's true. That's true.
He wants to see action as the fruit of his labor.
Right. That's true.
So we always ask, our guests, tell us something that, maybe not everyone knows about yourself. And we get, I played clarinet first chair in third grade or whatever, but I've never.
Those don't make it on air,
Yeah.
by the way.
But I got to ask this one. You got to tell me the story. I proposed to my wife the first time I met her.
That's
First time I
crazy.
ever saw her, the first time I ever met her. Now,
Were you on a date?
it was not. We were not on a date.
Marriage.com.
Yeah. So, first of all, this is a very long story, which I won't tell. But I'll just I didn't marry her that year. It was not till something like 6 years later.
Okay.
And then, from the day we kissed, the day we were married was 4 months.
Wow.
But the first time I ever met her was in the mall, and we were actually there for a church youth group Polaroid party. Polaroid party is kind of like a scavenger hunt, and you have like items on a list of things that you and your group have to take a picture of, and you get points for it. One of the items on the list was take a picture of someone in your group proposing to a stranger. And so I saw this beautiful girl, and I thought, this is a way that I could approach her with an excuse, right? And so I did. And that's why I had like 4 of my buddies with me. Go up to her, hey, I have to kind of do this thing, and we're doing this Polaroid party. Would you mind if I propose to you and take a picture of it? So she agrees, and so that was the first time I ever met her. I have a picture of me on my knee proposing
No
to her
way.
as a 16-year-old.
So it wasn't a real proposal.
This is true.
Really?
True. But it is true that I proposed to her the first time I met her, but it didn't say it was a actual proposal.
So I was reading your pre-interview material last night, and I read that to my wife, and I said, he proposed the first time he met her. And she goes, yeah, but how many years did it take her to say yes?
6 years. 6 years, yeah. No, we'll celebrate 21 years in October. So I think, we there's times I look back and, what did we lose in those 6 years? Maybe we went and grew up a little bit on our own and then came back together. But that is, it was whenever I reconnected with her years later, it was the memory of that then propelled me. I saw her again, and I thought, I know her from somewhere. And then remembering where I knew her from then obviously allowed me kind of the entry to kind of be able to come and bring that back up and kind of say, oh, yeah, that shared experience, And so anyway, it's worked out so far.
Yeah, what a neat story.
The other thing I thought was interesting is you said that you lived in Taiwan, or actually grew up in Taiwan to missionary parents, knowing your dad was a minister. That makes more sense now. How long were you there?
From when I was 2 to when I was 8. So both my brother and sister were born there. They actually have a Made in Taiwan stamp on the back of their head. I went there obviously before I could remember. But growing up, I went to Chinese school, and then I eventually went to Taipei American School. I wish I still remembered Mandarin. I used to speak it fluently. But then coming back to the States, you learn it as a child, obviously. Like when you're learning to speak and you live in Taiwan, you're going to be speaking Chinese if you want to be able to get anything done. When I came back to the States, though, I just slowly lost it. So I remember bits and pieces here and there, but my wife swears that I still speak Chinese in my sleep sometimes. I don't remember any of it, but if I knew then what I knew now, I obviously made sure I remembered it. But
Well, I was born to missionary parents as well.
Oh, is that right?
Brazil. I was born in Brazil.
Wow.
But I don't remember. We came back when I was an infant still. So
wow.
I did not learn Portuguese. And they only spoke it at home when they didn't want us to know what they were saying.
Right. Yeah. That's right.
So just curious, and we want to get in, obviously talk about your business, but
yeah.
Do you have kids?
I do. I have 2 daughters, so I have a 19 and an 18-year-old.
Does that change the way, like growing up part of your life over abroad, has it changed the way that you parent your kids at all, you think?
I don't know. I don't really think so. I think the biggest thing that you get whenever you grow up, especially anyone that I think grows up abroad, the United States is such a blessed country.
Mm-hmm.
And what we have here. And so most people grow, born and raised here. They don't have really the perspective of really what the rest of the 95% of the world, how they live. So I think that probably the biggest thing is, and I didn't remember a ton of it, obviously, because I was a young child at the time. But then, of course, my parents being missionaries obviously reminded us. So I think it helps you keep grounded, helps you keep perspective on just kind of what you have. I use the term, first world problems a lot. When you hear about these things, and I'll be complaining about something, I'll go, well, I guess these are all first world problems.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's probably the advantage that you have there, and then it's something that my parents passed to me, and then I do pass down to my kids, just being able to kind of keep things in perspective.
Yeah. It's important in today's world.
So Alkami is your company, and this was the first company you started.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, what gave you any kind of idea as to why you should start a company? What was it about starting a company that was attractive, and what prepared you for that?
Well, for one small correction, so I founded Alkami, but it's no longer really my company because it's owned by all the shareholders. I'm one of those shareholders, but we have a lot of investors. It's owned, a quarter of it's owned by the employees. So we have a lot of owners now of Alkami, but I started the company and obviously still work there on a daily basis. As far as what gave me the idea, it was really just seeing in the digital or in the banking space itself, this is around 2008, 2009 timeframe. What you had started to see in other industries like travel and retail and media, music and so forth, was this real digital transformation that was happening where the products or services that they offered could be digitized. And so there's kind of this immutable law of electronification that any product or service that can be delivered electronically eventually will be, because there's just the speed, the convenience, and the low cost of it just precludes the physical delivery from being able to be competitive, right? So, if you're in the dry cleaning business, you don't have to worry about everything going digital, right? If you're in the fast food business, you don't have to worry about everything going digital. But if you're in the banking business, there's really no product that you offer that cannot be delivered through a desktop, mobile device, or whatever. And so we knew that would happen. The issue was that the systems, what we call the first generation online banking systems, which were really developed in the late 90s, early 2000s, were really developed at a time where online banking was this kind of curiosity, kind of like, hey, if you had an AOL account, you can kind of do your dial-up networking and you can check your balances without calling anybody, right? But those platforms weren't really built for kind of the new world, which is where a bank or credit union would need to become really an e-commerce company. So they didn't do a lot of the things that they would need to do in order to truly replace the branch experience and the cross-selling and the self-service and all those types of things. So when you saw kind of what happened to the travel agents and the music stores and obviously what you see in retail and obviously continuing today, especially with the dominance of Amazon, it was only a matter of time before that was going to happen to the banking industry as well. And I had the good fortune to my first real, I would call kind of real career job that I started in '97 was working for a financial technology company. That really what they pioneered was check imaging. If you remember years ago, you used to get your checks back in the mail.
Yeah.
And so I learned in working for that software company, I learned a lot about the technology in the back room of banks and credit unions and kind of how it worked. And so spending about 8 years there, then being exposed to all these other things, I saw that everything's going to be moving online for these banks and credit unions, and the systems that are out there today were really not ever built we're not really built with that in mind. And there needs to be a whole new platform, one that has a big focus on a great user experience that ties into all the different back office systems for full self-service by the end user, that has the ability to intelligently market and cross-sell the right products, just like whenever you go into Amazon and it says, you may be interested in this product. Users bought this, also bought that. Well, they need the same sort of thing. So that was really kind of the thought, was kind of saying this is where the industry's going, and the solutions out there can't do it. So if we'll come up with something, there's a need for it.
Cool. Well, we're going to take a break. You're listening to The Next Level on Talk Radio 1190.
Stick around.
Hi, this is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty. If your office lease is going to be expiring in the next year or two, the one thing I would tell you definitely do not want to do is exercise a renewal option. Now, that may sound a little nuts. When you negotiate for that renewal option, why wouldn't you actually want to use it? Well, the reason is because while you want to have one as a reservation for your space so the landlord can't lease the space out from under you, that option may not actually work the way you want it to now. It may have made sense 5 years ago, but it doesn't today. The only thing that changes when you exercise a renewal option are the expiration date and the rent. But you may want to do other things like have another option to renew, have an option to terminate or expand. You may want to be able to expand now or have a new base year for your operating expenses. There's all kinds of things that need to be considered. So we recommend that you renegotiate, not renew. For more information, contact me, Bob Gibbons, at texastenantrep.com. That's texastenantrep.com. Welcome back to The Next Level, Conversations that Propel Business. We're talking with Stephen Bohanon with Alkami Technology, and you can learn more about them at alkami.com, and that's spelled Alkami.
Thanks for doing that.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So, Stephen, you were talking before we went to the break about how the idea came about. So now you have the idea, right? We're going back to your dad's quote here, and you can talk about it. How do you go from that to execution to where you're at today? So,
well, the first step is the easiest. So the first step was, the first thing you need, like everyone should know, is you got to have someone willing to pay for it, right? Because you're going to have revenue to drive it. So really what we did, myself and a little bit about, there's a co-founder of Alkami, Gary Nelson, who I worked with at that first company I was talking about.
Okay.
So he was the CEO of that company. They ultimately ended up selling that company. He was able to retire. And so he and I reconnected. And so I talked to him about this idea, and Gary Nelson would have said the same thing to me that my father, who also his name was Gary, would have, which is, you've got the easy part done. So ultimately, we talked about this. I talked to him about this idea, and he ultimately financed the ability to go out and build a prototype for this vision for what would be kind of the next generation of online banking. And so over the next 60 days, worked with some developers that I knew to kind of build out this prototype so that we would be able to have something to demonstrate, to go out and see if we could get someone to bite and to buy it. And so that process happened over the course of about 60 to 90 days. We found a company that basically said, if you can build this, we'll buy it. And so we got our first contract. So that portion, which seemed like a lot of work at the time, that was a very small part, but that was ultimately the spark that really started it, that said, okay, this idea is good enough that people will pay money for it.
And this was what, 2008
This is
or
2009. So we started in August 2009, and then we had our first verbal commitment in November. That contract eventually got signed in January the following year, but we had the verbal commitment in November, and then we had to go out and start trying to hire people to actually build it.
And remind us, in 2009, where was the internet and mobile technology? Was it at a point where speeds were such that all this was sort of easy and obvious that people were going to do it?
No. I mean, it still wasn't there. I mean, this is about a year after the iPhone had been released, which was quite honestly an inspiration for the ideas here at Alkami. I think the difficult thing in 2009 was it was an extremely difficult time in order to raise funds. The angel investors were all gone. The VCs were scared. You basically just had an idea. And the other thing is that when you think about who the potential customers would be for this particular idea, the banks, they were just getting hammered, right? So they were just trying to stay in business. So when you think about some of the early things there, and then even some of our early investors, I mean, they really had a lot of vision and a lot of a risk appetite to be able to take this on, because it was not a time where people were just putting money towards things, just making bets all across the board. I mean, people were tight-fisted with their money at the time.
So was this first potential customer a local bank, a credit union, a giant bank? What kind of?
They were actually another company that wanted to get into the online banking business as well. And what we were doing was building out the back-end platform for them. And then we used those finances to also take and then build out our front-end platform, which is the overall UI and user experience. So they didn't have the expertise internally to be able to do that, but wanted to get into this business, and so really contracted with us to deliver that software to them.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So was your background in finance or in technology or a combination?
Good
or
question.
Something totally different?
So my background really was always in sales. So from the time I was in high school on, I think that where I would be a little different than maybe a typical, quote, salesperson is I really cared about the details and how the product worked. And that first company I worked for, I'd spent just days and days with the engineers learning how the system works, reading lots and lots of books around how databases work and how application code works, because I was younger than everybody else that was in the market. And so because of that, I knew that that people would naturally probably not give me as much credibility when I walked in. And so I thought that the way to overcome that was to really be knowledgeable about the product. So whenever I spoke about it, that they would say, hey, this young guy kind of knows a thing or two. And so I think it was probably that insecurity or that desire to be taken seriously, and being younger by probably 8 to 10 years than everyone else that was kind of selling in this industry at the time. That made me work harder than others and really learn the product.
And so that was your background. What about your partner, Gary Nelson?
He had been doing this, and Gary's a bit older than I am, so when he sees
us,
he'll laugh about that. No. I mean, his background was definitely for many years in the financial technology business, and so this company that I worked for with him, that I worked for him for about 8 years. This was not his first entree into the space.
So you had the potential customer who wanted to get into this industry, who was sort of, quote, subbing out that product to be built by you, And then you were subbing that out to a developer, or did you bring developers in-house?
We brought developers in-house.
Okay.
Yeah. So initially, the initial developers that kind of built out the prototype, they were just contractors. There were some folks that I knew up in the Pacific Northwest. But the folks that ultimately that were going to be doing it, we then had to go hire employees to actually go and build it that would be full-time for us.
So you're building out the back end. How does that end up? Because you guys are now delivering on the front end, right? So how did that happen? Was it awkward with your client that you'd built the back end for? Or?
No, it was no problem. Just the back end. There's a lot of complexity in the back end of these platforms because you're connecting to 10 or 12 other third-party systems in the background. So a lot of the integration that has to happen is complex. You're connecting to a lot of legacy systems that aren't built on the same code base. So that part is the not fun part, but a lot of times the hardest part of this.
Sure.
And then what everyone wants to do is build out the front end because people like, everyone fancies themselves a designer. Yeah. Everyone's like, oh, we've got this vision for how it's going to interact with the users. And so they had, we had our vision of it. They had a little different vision. So they said, well, we'll pay you to build out all the back end integrations and stuff. And then we're going to go off and build the front end and attach it to that. And we said, we don't really like what you're doing, so we're going to build our own, but we're going to take the money that you gave us to build out the back end, and we're going to build our own version of what we think that's going to be.
And that wasn't considered a conflict of interest from their perspective?
No.
Are they still in the market?
They ultimately later abandoned getting into the online banking market. It's a tough market to be in.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So you're hiring people. When did you start, making that pivot? So you built the front end, and then you started going to banks and what was the problem you're trying to solve for them?
Well, the problem we're trying to solve was like what I mentioned earlier, which was the systems that were out there were pretty archaic, didn't allow them a lot of flexibility, didn't connect to a lot of the other back office systems, didn't have a great user experience, and then they're trying to compete with the national banks in the country. You look at Chase and B of A and Wells Fargo and stuff like that, and they just, you can't. Those guys have, they spend literally hundreds of millions of dollars a year just on the digital banking platform, right?
Yeah.
And so, as a regional or community financial institution, you just do not have the scale to be able to compete at that level with them. So you have to rely upon a company like us. There's only a few companies in this space that do what we do. And ultimately, when you what banks and credit unions are doing is they're ultimately picking a partner like us in order to kind of pool all their resources to build a product that can work for them, so that they can go and compete with those guys. So that's ultimately what we do on a daily basis is help them compete.
So who is your ideal client then?
You could break it down as, okay, it's a regional to, I would say, not the small community financial institutions. So it would, we affectionately call them the wannabes. In other words, they want to be bigger, they want to be competitive. That's our ideal client. There are some financial institutions that are, really comfortable with just kind of status quo, staying where they are, keeping the lights on. Those types of people are typically not a good client with us because we move really, really fast. We change fast. But the people that say, look, I want to get to the next level. I realize that I have to compete with the national banks. I realize that I have to innovate in order to do that. Those are the ones. So sometimes that's a fairly small institution that has a lot of big plans. So it doesn't necessarily mean just because they're small, they're not a good client, and it doesn't necessarily mean all big clients are good clients. It's really the culture of the organization, of the financial institution, and whether or not they're a good cultural fit with us. Thinking about the future, wanting to innovate, realizing the importance of the digital channel in how important it is for the digital channel to be great in order for them to compete, and how strategic it is. Those are the types of clients we tend to attract.
So is it going to be like assets under management for the bank or the credit union, or a number of branches, or how do you determine
It's roughly tied to the assets. Okay. So it's roughly tied to the assets. But you can have a scenario where you could have a financial institution that has what's important to us is the number of actual users. So for banks, they're called customers. For credit unions, they're called members. But they're ultimately users of the platform. That's really what drives us, is how many users we have on the platform. So you can have a scenario where you may have a relatively large bank, for instance, that maybe is $50 billion bank, but they're really maybe a former thrift, or they have maybe they are a large mortgage servicer, so they have relatively few number of active online banking users, but they have a really high asset base. But generally speaking, assets is a good indicator of the relative size of the number of customers they have.
And you guys serve like 100 financial institutions with like 5.5 million users.
That's correct.
I mean, that's incredible. How frequently is somebody getting on their online to their banking? I mean, are there numbers or averages or whatever? I mean, how frequently is this being used?
The average user logs in about 3.5 to 4 times a week.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That is amazing because, I mean, Stephen, did you ever go to your physical bank 3 to 4.5 times a week?
No.
Not unless you had to.
No.
only when he was behind on his payments.
What are you talking about? I just kept my cash under my
You had
mattress.
cash?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, yeah, that is amazing because, I mean, obviously the banking industry has changed so dramatically. My bank now, the drive-through is open from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, I can't get to that.
Yeah, you're
That's
working during
crazy.
those times, yeah.
And it's more user friendly than ever before. I mean, the
That's
banker's
true.
hour thing when I was growing up, I remember like, what do you mean they're closed? It's like it's 3 o'clock.
Yeah, I mean, when you go to Walmart and their bank is open at on Sundays, that's pretty incredible. Well, we're gonna have to take
Mobile's changed. Oh, sorry about that.
sorry, we're gonna have to take a quick
Yeah.
break. We'll be back and we'll pick this up on the other side.
Hi, my name is Fern, and I've been an empowered team member at Alkali for over 5 years. I first learned about Alkali through an online job board and was intrigued to learn that Alkali was a Dave Ramsey endorsed local provider. But what captivated me was Alkali's mission statement, which is closely aligned with my own beliefs. So what's kept me at Alkali for over 5 years? First, Alkali's 5 core values match my own. Second, I've been empowered to use my unique abilities to impact our community, our clients, and Alkali. If you'd like to learn more about becoming an empowered Alkali team member, visit our website, alkaliservices.com. That's ALKALI services.com.
We're back with Stephen Bohannon, founder, chief strategy, and sales officer of Alkami Technology, alkami.com.
So we were just talking before the break about mobile banking, online banking, how that's changing the banking world dramatically. And we were saying, you were saying that 3.5 to 4 times a week people are going online to deal with their banking. What are you finding that they're doing when they're on there, and what is their device of choice when going on?
Well, what they're doing, I mean, it's all the self-service functions that you can think of. I mean, the majority of logins or accesses in what we call interactions with the desktop or mobile banking interface is checking your balance. So it could be something like, hey, I need to see if I have enough money to pay this bill. You could be in line at the grocery store and want to know if when you swipe that card, it's going to clear. So there's a lot of reasons now people with such fast access through mobile banking that log into the system to kind of see their information. But transfers, bill payments, applying for loans, using the budgeting tools, checking their savings goals. It's kind of any and everything that you can think of as far as from a banking perspective.
And is most of that happening mobile, like phones?
Yeah, we've actually
now,
just
or?
crossed. I mean, it's been about even for a while, but we've actually just crossed. Like what we're seeing is about 57, 58% of our logins coming from mobile devices, and 42% or so coming from the desktop browser devices. Some of our customers have as high as 70-30, 70% mobile, 30% desktop.
Wow.
So we know people obviously still use the desktop, but the growth side is on the mobile. It's just too convenient.
So is there any behavior that you see among the customers of your clients, the users, that surprises you? Either things that they're doing that surprise you or things that they're not doing that surprise you?
No, I don't think so. I mean, and the only reason I would say that is just because we've been doing it for so long now. I mean, we've been kind of tracking the numbers, so we kind of see where it's going. So I would say when we see that, there's nothing that kind of stands out as, wow, that's really surprising. I think the biggest difference, the only thing that I would say was that in the past, you would see that people would log in less from a desktop device. But what you're seeing is that the desktop, whenever I talk about the percentages of people logging into their browser versus mobile, the desktop actually isn't going down in the number of logins. It's just that all the net new logins are coming from mobile. So people are just accessing it more because I think the convenience of mobile. And now, like with our app, we have Face ID and Touch ID and all those types of things. It's just so simple to open the app and put your thumbprint or it reads your face, and then you're looking at your balances within 5 seconds, right? So that type of thing just makes it just another, people just access it more. Whereas before, you had to take the time, go sit down, get your computer, open up your browser, visit the page, put in your username and password. So I just think, as humans, like, 20 seconds, maybe total, but for us, I mean, it makes a difference, right? So I just think the fact that it's at your fingertips and with you all the time, you just see people interacting with it more. But that's actually a good thing for our customers, because that's more opportunities they have to communicate with them, to cross-sell, to build brand loyalty and so forth with them. So it's not a bad thing. They're not coming to the branches anymore, but now they're really leveraging the digital channel to be able to maximize that relationship.
So technology is advancing so quickly. You guys are helping, lead that for especially the local smaller banks and everything else, and probably a lot of the bigger ones too. Where's it going? Like, if we're sitting 5 years from now, like with technology and AI and all these things, like what's your vision for the kind of things that maybe we can't do now, but we'll be able to?
I think that the two big things that you'll see is, one, you'll see it around the various interfaces that people use. So in the past, you've really looked at it in terms of, we've even taught today, desktop/browser or mobile. But I think that when you go forward and you look at especially all the voice integrated technology that's out there, you look at the car integration technology that's out there, I think what you're going to see is that the banking is just going to follow along all those other consumer expectations, where you'll be able to, ask Alexa, what's my balance? Alexa, did that check clear? Alexa, pay my electric bill. So and we're already doing. I mean, some of our customers are doing that today, and there's a lot of AI vendors coming up that are doing what we call conversational IVR, and that technology we think will get better and better and better. So that'll just be one more way that people can interact with it. So whether it be now you have the refrigerator devices that have access to the internet and so forth. So I think whether it be voice or other what we call IoT, Internet of Things, other sort of devices that can access through APIs and get access to all those same functions and data, I think that's going to be what you're going to see. It's just a natural progression of, as a new interface takes hold for consumers, you're going to also be able to do your banking through that interface, right? So I think it's just going to kind of ride sidecar along with the natural innovation that happens in the market.
I have a buddy named Daryl Harvey,
right.
Great guy, and he's Mr. Technology. He loves technology. He runs a big data center, and he has like a 22-inch flat screen in his
refrigerator.
I'm like, you're the only guy I've ever known that has this. I was like, why would you ever want that? But while I'm at his house, doorbell rings, face pops up from his Ring doorbell on
his refrigerator.
So now he doesn't have to walk to the front door, or his wife doesn't. It's just right there. And I thought, wow, that's pretty incredible. One of the biggest things, though, that I think we got to talk about is security. So security's got to be a huge, huge factor in your business. And as a user, should I be concerned about the safety of banking with a mobile device or any other device?
Well, it's funny you brought that. Well, one, you should always be concerned, right? Because we don't know what we don't know a lot of times, right? So there are people full time out there, just like we go to work every day. There are people who go to work every day whose job it is to go and steal data. I mean, that's their job, right? That's their full time job, and some of them are pretty good at it. So you should always be concerned, and I think that the biggest thing that we tell our clients to tell their users ultimately is, a lot of self-monitoring is important. Like some of the things that we do in our system, for instance, you really have, let me break it down, you have kind of two kind of security threats. One is a true kind of, I would call like an infrastructure security threat, where if you have someone that can get into the systems, get into the databases, be able to decrypt the data and pull that out, that doesn't have to have any sort of username and password. It's not you individually they're targeting. It's just the overall data that they're targeting, so they can go and sell it and try to commit some sort of fraud from it. So that's one, and that's one set of kind of security that we have within our system. And, we pay a lot of attention to that. We have a group that does that. The next type of security is kind of the individual fraud security, and that would be for either of you where you're using the same username and password across maybe multiple sites, and so someone got it from one site. Now they're going to go and they find out where you bank, and now they're going to try to use it in your online banking. Those types of things are harder to prevent, But one of the ways is through self-awareness. So, for instance, some of the things that we do is we send an alert. Like anytime someone logs into your account, you get an alert to your trusted device that says your account was just accessed. If this wasn't you, let us know, right? Pay attention to your recent login history and recent login activity when you log in to make sure that, wait a minute, I haven't been in New Hampshire, I haven't been in Vietnam or Russia recently. So what we do is we provide a lot of information to the end user so that if they're watching, they can see the activity that's been on their account. And then you have then the third piece is you have kind of which is kind of a high target would be dormant accounts. Accounts that are out there that people don't really log into regularly, those are probably some of the ones that are the most susceptible because they're not watching, right? And so by the time they realize it's gone, the money's gone, is when they get that next monthly statement. That's the only way they're keeping track of their finances, through their monthly statements, and then it's there. So in those types of things, we do things for our financial institutions to detect deviations from normal behavior so that they can then look at that and say, there's some weird account activity. They weren't logging in. All of a sudden, they're logging in all the time, and they've never transferred money out. And all of a sudden, they're trying to transfer money out. So those are kind of the three probably primary ways that we try to look at security.
You mentioned data. I mean, and people trying to steal it and for nefarious purposes, right? But what about? There's got to be a significant data play that you guys can help the banks get better at serving their clients, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, we're when you say from a security perspective or just in general?
Well, I'm just saying, so you talked about the security part, but then the good guys, the trusted financial institutions that we bank with,
right?
I mean, they send us stuff all the time. It seems like there's probably a lot of value in their own data.
Absolutely.
That you could actually help them serve their clients better. Is that part of what you guys deliver too, or
that is
where you're going?
In fact, that's a big strategic objective. We just rolled out a new product actually around this, around a BI tool that also factors in, kind of rolls into the marketing aspect of things. But yeah, that is the future. The future is, and what's nice about now, we've achieved a certain amount of scale where, by the end of the year, we'll have over 5 million users on the system. We've achieved a certain scale that now that amount of data, the amount of data on 5 million users, which is roughly, a billion transactions a year, for instance, that's the kind of data that you can use to then, serve better. So whether that be in maybe fraud detection type of patterns, it could be something as simple as saying, Steve, you spent $120 on Starbucks this month. That's double the average. Like that kind of data may be something that you wouldn't know if you didn't have that kind of data across the board. Being able to detect individual users and say, I recognize these particular patterns for this particular user, and I know that this person is very likely to be interested in an auto loan right now based upon other people who have had similar behaviors that then took out an auto loan, right? So using that data to be able to help the banks and credit unions run their business across the board, whether it be security or business growth, is a very, very important thing. And that's really where AI and machine learning all come into play.
I understand that Target is actually one of the leaders in trying to figure out all that kind of behavior, the psychographics of, if this person bought these things and in fact, I even read that a woman was sort of outed as being pregnant by Target.
Oh, really?
Because they knew based on what she was doing
she bought?
that she was more than likely going to be pregnant. And so people found out about it before she intended because of that.
It is. So it's interesting, and this is a generational thing as well. It can be kind of spooky, right? Because, like my kids, in fact, we talk about this because it's something we've integrated within our mobile platform is using beacons, Bluetooth beacons, basically. So, and you may see this if you walk into Starbucks or you walk into a place, it'll recognize you're there, right? It's got you basically once that beacon detects your device, then it looks up that device in its database, and it can you can basically get a specific message. For the older generation, that's spooky. Whoa, how did you know I just walked into Nordstrom? For my kid, they expect it. I want to know that the thing I bought last time is now on sale, and I expect that kind of service whenever I walk into Nordstrom.
That's service to them.
Right.
All right, we'll talk more after we get some service from our advertisers.
Stick around.
Hello, my name is Michael Engel, CEO of Clean Sleep and a few other companies, and I'm here to uncover more than just the dirty little secrets these guys have in their beds today.
We're back with the next level, and we're talking to Stephen Bohanon of Alkami. You can learn more about them at alkami.com, ALKAMI.
So, Stephen, real quickly, biggest breakdown turn breakthrough for you guys?
I'm trying to remember how many years ago it was, but I think it was right about 5. It'll be 5, I think, in September. We had landed a large client, and it'd be the largest by a multiple that we would have ever had. And it would have really put us on the map because everyone they were a fairly high-profile client and large and very, very difficult. And so we were all excited to launch our system as their new online banking system. And basically, the day we turned it on and they cut the systems over to ours, within 2 or 3 minutes, the system just crashed. And then we thought, oh, okay, well, just reboot a couple servers and we'll start it again. A few minutes later, crashed. And so this went on and on for hours. Ultimately, for like 24 hours, we had everyone looking at it. No one, we're all trying to figure it out. We tested, we had done all these things, like trying to figure out what was happening. And of course, as you can imagine, just the elation that you would have of getting this and getting the success is replaced by an equal amount of fear and despair of, oh my gosh, if we don't get through this, is so high profile, we're toast. Right?
Was this a soft launch or a hard launch?
This was a hard launch.
Oh,
yeah, in
no.
fact, they had a countdown clock on their website, which we've never allowed any of our customers to do that again. Anyway, we worked through that, figured it out, got it taken care of, and I would say that what was really interesting is some years later, they had the opportunity to sign with us, for a new contract or to obviously leave. And one of the things that they told us, and by the way, and from then, that they were a good partner to work with. But one of the things they told us was that not just whenever things were going well, but with them seeing how we dealt with that adversity, how committed we were to it, how much we cared about it, how much we communicated with them. It's kind of like, when you see the person kind of in the foxhole, you kind of know whether or not you want to go to battle with them. And I think that, and they told us that. They said, just seeing you guys, it just kind of told us that's the kind of company we want to be in partnership with. And so it's ironic that later on that was actually something that actually benefited us as opposed to hurt us, kind of those struggles of the past.
Wow.
I think that's interesting because I've found a similar experience when I don't have time to share it. But I mean, like one of our best client relationships, it started off like there was just a misfire and we took ownership and we really, really dug in. I think a lot of times people want to run and hide or avoid, but it's really powerful that just owning it.
Yeah.
Because mistakes are going to happen.
Yeah.
So it's what you do with those mistakes that matters more so than the fact that you're going to pretend like. And that's my big problem with politicians is that they can never make a mistake, right? They've always got a reason why they didn't make a mistake, and that was really good. One of the highs. What's one of the highs that you guys have had recently in your business?
Well, probably most recently, we did get our sign put atop our building, and that was kind of a neat. And it's just a sign, right? But the symbolism behind it, because you're. When you, especially in a nice building in a great part of town, you all know if you're in the real estate business, you got to do some serious commitment to growth, and you have to take over a certain amount of floors and all that. So it was really the symbolism of being able to even have the naming rights to that building, and then being able to have it up there as kind of a call it like the beacon on the hill, for us. So we're just so happy for all of our employees because they've just put in so much work over the years and continue to do so today. And so it's kind of a nice badge of honor for them to be able to say, that's where I work.
Well, and you have a very high-profile building. It's a great building. Very visible from 2 major highways. Yeah. It's a beautiful building, one of my favorites in Dallas, one of the best landlords in Dallas. Yep. So all things considered, and you use the second best tenant rep in Dallas to represent you.
Yeah, I'm going to let them know that.
I know those guys. They're good guys. Yeah. But yeah, congratulations. I think, and I love that it's so high profile. And I love the fact that you're saying what it does for your employees. Yeah, that it's not just an ego thing for you. It's for the validation for the employees. So that obviously tells us that there's an issue. There's a cultural issue with your employees and the way you guys treat employees. So talk about the culture of your company.
Yeah, I think that's and you hit on it there. It's a team. I don't use the word family just because you can't fire your family, and but it's a good team, and if you've been a part of a good team, you know how that is. And in some ways, there's even a different type of relationship than even what you have with your family members, right? Because everyone chooses to be there, right? They don't have to be. I think the pride for the team, which is what was really cool, is that we did it, and as a leader in a company. It's quite a compliment when people, there's kind of 2 types of people that trust you, right? Your employees and your clients. And so whenever your employees decide to come work for you, they're ultimately saying, I trust you. I trust the vision that you have for it. I think it's a good idea. I trust that you're going to take care of me, that you have my back. And so, the sign is just one kind of physical kind of symbol of saying, we told you if you'd stick with this and go with this vision, we're going to make it someday, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think part of that is just kind of just a symbolism of, hey, the hard work you put in, you see the growth and success that we're achieving together. So that's a very important thing for us, and our culture is really kind of built on that team mentality. There's reading a book recently, and you've heard this from other people, but they say you take care of the people, the product, and the profits in that order. Mm-hmm. And I would say that the Alkami culture is definitely one of those. We basically feel as though we have to model for our employees the way we want them to take care of our clients. So if we want them to communicate well with our clients, be transparent, work hard for them, and go to the mat for them, then we have to do that for them, or else what's their example to do that? So we realize that they're going to reflect our culture internally to the market, and so we put a high value on reinforcing that culture, and it's just the right thing to do. So regardless of the actual business benefits, it's nice whenever you can do it something that's just the right thing to do, and you also benefit from it from a business perspective as well.
Absolutely.
So I'm assuming then you hire around it. I mean, clearly, and it sounds like you reward, promote, all that. So I mean, you've driven the core values of your organization fully into the culture.
Without a doubt. I mean, in fact, we hired a new chief HR officer about a year ago, and she's fantastic. And one of the things that she did is really codified our culture. And she actually did it by taking comments from our employee engagement surveys that we did internally, as opposed to saying, well, what's our culture? And we all sit around and we put things up on the board. Yeah. Well, we're innovative and we're, whatever. And so she said, well, how about we just take what the employees said about what you like working about Alkami and how would you describe Alkami? Because that really is your culture, whether you've codified it or not. And so we did that. And then we said, now we have to be very intentional about reinforcing it. And one of the things that we do that I think is very different, part of an employee's performance review, we have 6 culture compounds, and I won't go into all of them, but there are things like optimistic perseverance, transparent communication, and so forth. So in addition to an employee's actual kind of performance of doing their job, is they actually have to rate themselves and they get reviewed based upon the culture compounds. How did you demonstrate optimistic perseverance? Give me an example. Tell me how you've demonstrated transparent communication. And so part of the performance review is actually the company culture, what we call them culture compounds. Alkami, we kind of try to use everything, some sort of chemical or science thing. But ultimately our culture characteristics, if you will, we actually include those as part of the employee's performance review. And what that does is that says, this is important to us. These aren't just words on a page or that look cool in an investor deck. These are actually really important things. And they're plastered all over our walls and stuff as you walk around. So it is not just something we say. It's everyone understands, what we do. And we joke with each other about it. We'll say something like, well, that's not transparent communication. So we even joke with each other about everyone knows kind of what those things are. And sometimes people think they're a little hokey or corny. But the truth of the matter is you've got to really codify those and put down what those are, and it holds you accountable to actually living by it.
And when you can start making jokes about it like that, that's when people have really internalized it.
Yep.
Because now they can really see the nuance of doing it right, doing it wrong.
It helps them make decisions better. I mean, it empowers them to lead themselves better. I mean, there's so many great things that come from that. One thing that you mentioned early on, though, that caught my attention, you talked about the culture of the banks. And knowing whether or not they're a right fit. So do you actually extend, I know you do it with your employees, do you put your core values on who you're going to partner with from the bank in the sales cycle?
We actually do to a certain extent. We've made mistakes in the past where we didn't. And that's a really difficult thing to do. You can rationalize and, you feel like I need the sale and you'll do it. And then later you kind of know, this customer may be trouble, And I will tell you, we try to do that. It is something we focus on, and it's something we ask even our sales team. Do you think they'll be a good culture fit for us? Because you can typically get early warning signs about the way that they interact with you, the way they treat you. If they keep you kind of at arm's length, if you feel like they maybe haven't been fully honest with you, how they negotiate the contract. There's a lot of warning signs about how it's going to be, because our contracts are 5 to 7 years in length, right? So this isn't like you buy a car and you drive it off the lot and I never have to see you again, right? This is something where these people have to interact with us and we have to interact with them for years to come. And so we absolutely try to qualify for that. I'd say we're probably 90% accurate on it, but it is definitely a focus on that.
Well, it's the same as if you hire them. You have the best processes. Every once in a while, someone's going to fit or slip through, and they're not going to be a fit. But what we found is that you talked about taking care of the people first. Our people, when we have that right, it's actually a reward of working in our organization. Is that they love our clients, right? And so it's like there's value. It's hard to put a dollar amount to it, but there's value to the employees viewed as part of their compensation because, hey, we have really great clients. We love serving them.
Absolutely.
Well, and sometimes when you take the wrong client, that hurts your other clients because, some clients take a disproportionate share of the time, unnecessarily.
Fire me for 12 years.
And we actually have the numbers on exactly who those are.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
You're right.
So what's next? Looking out 3 years, what's next?
Well, we're looking at potentially an IPO, but that's a potential depending on kind of market conditions and whether or not we continue to perform according to plan. We really that's from a broader kind of company financial perspective. We are obviously focused on the product side of things. The AI, the machine learning, the data aspects of things. But I would say it's really more of the same. I'd say probably the hardest thing for us to do is to not get distracted with a ton of other opportunities that come across our desk, but to say we've got a vision, we've got a mission, let's stick to it and execute.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being our guest today.
Thank you.
We've really enjoyed it, Stephen. For our listeners, please go to alkami.com to learn more. Go to nextlevelshow.com to learn more about the show, and we'll be back next week with another great guest.
Spread the word. Have a great week.
Bye.